All right, listeners, I think you know that we are part of the Radiotopia network, which is basically a network built on the idea that you should support the most creative, independent audio makers around. No one, and I mean no one, embodies the Radiotopia ethos more than Benjamin Walker and his show Theory of Everything. Benjamin, who I've known for a long time, has been making beautiful, personal, sprawling audio documentaries for decades that help us understand the very strange world we live in. And now he has a new series called Not All Propaganda is Art. The new series goes back to the 1950s when Western security agencies like the CIA paid artists, writers, and intellectuals to fight the cultural Cold War.
The CIA funds were free. I mean, no one was told what to say.
Gloria Steinem, activist who sees the CIA as a sort of enlightened pal or rich uncle, there is another viewpoint.
Look, if you're listening to this show, I know you like secret histories. I know you like a mix of culture and politics and shadowy figures. So what are you waiting for? Not All Propaganda is Art from Benjamin Walker. You can find it now wherever you listen or at theoryofeverythingpodcast.com. Hello and welcome to This Day in Esoteric Political History from Radiotopia. My name is Jody Avirgan. This day, June 20th, 1979. I went and looked this up. You know what the weather was like in Washington, D.C. on that day? You can look up the historical records. It was pretty warm, low 80s, but it was a little cloudy, which kind of is relevant to what we're talking about today because this was the day that Jimmy Carter held a White House ceremony to dedicate 32 solar panels that he had installed on the roof of the White House. I don't think he had installed them, though we know his habitat. He could have. From his, we know he's a very good carpenter, but I don't think he had installed them. Nevertheless, 32 solar panels are now on the roof of the White House. They were part of a hot water system that would heat the water in the cafeteria, in the laundry, other parts of the White House. They cost $28,000 to install. But they were much more than just a little infrastructure upgrade. They were symbolic as much as anything. Carter was reacting to an energy crisis that was dragging the country down around that time in the late 70s. And he was also building, I would say, on Nixon's kind of surprising green energy legacy that we've talked about on the show a little bit before. So let's talk about the solar panels in the White House, why Carter installed them, and why, I'll just go ahead and spoil it, Reagan tore them up a few years later, seemingly out of just spite. I don't know. We'll get into that. But here to discuss, as always, Nicole Hemmer of Columbia and Kellie Carter-Jackson of Wellesley. Hello there.
Hello, Jody.
Hey there.
So let's go through the actual panels and then why they were installed. 32 panels on the White House roof. It seems like aesthetics was a pretty big consideration and roadblock to this as well.
Oh, it was huge. I mean, they even painted some of the solar panels white so that you couldn't see them from the ground around the White House, which, if you know anything about solar panels, doesn't make them work that well if you paint them white.
Yeah. A reflective color. Yeah.
Say, that is not a good idea. Solar panels, solar panels have come a long way. We should say that now I see them up everywhere on a lot of people's homes. And, it's not that big of a deal. But at the time that he is, proposing this idea, no one has solar panels on their homes. But people were certainly thinking about their consumption of energy and how to reduce energy and have renewable systems set up. And this is also during a time where you have, crazy high gas prices, and it's sort of similar to a time we live in right now. And, having alternatives and letting the president be the model to sort of set what these alternatives could be, I think was a really unique and somewhat revolutionary idea for the time.
And there were a lot of different frameworks that Carter used to explain why he was putting these solar panels up. Of course, there was the environmental reason, but it was also economic. As Kellie was saying, energy prices were through the roof. And there was also a real national security foreign policy piece of it as well, because one of the reasons you were having these oil shocks were because of things like the oil embargo by OPEC, tensions with Iran. And so the idea of American energy independence in that moment, which Carter is tying not to more drilling, but to solar power, the idea was that the U.S. wouldn't be kind of bad way to put it, but held hostage by other countries' energy supplies.
Yeah. Which, of course, is so relevant to now. And I got to say, I'm sort of surprised at how little it seems like the Biden administration has tried to connect what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening at the pump to they just came off this big fight for sort of green energy and new infrastructure and so forth. And I just, but I think it's evidence, and we see this with Carter too, that like when gas prices are high, when there's an energy crisis, it just puts you so on the back foot politically that the idea that then you would try and sort of jujitsu that and turn that into an argument, which would make sense, but politically it's really hard because people I think feel like it's, I don't know what, they feel like it's evasion, or it feels like, hey, those gas prices are high, but look over here, here's some solar panels. And I think in a lot of ways this, like a lot of Carter things, I think was generally viewed as kind of like a little bit of a joke, or a little like lark, or some sort of little thing that just didn't
well
play.
It's reactionary too, like everything that he's doing is a response to something that's happening, but it's not as though anyone in the country for that matter is being incredibly proactive about climate change and thinking of it in this way, which it would have been, I think, awesome to see, like, had a lot of these ideas been implemented wholesale across the country, what the world might look like a little bit today. But I think that the fact that he's at least trying to, like, symbolically put these solar panels up there to start, maybe that's the best thing to say, but they don't stay, so I don't know about that.
I mean, the solar panels were part of a much larger agenda, right? So he was also calling for much more investment, a vastly increased budget for energy technology research and development, tax credits for installing wind turbines and solar power. And part of the problem actually was that he was engaging in this very long-term thinking. How do we do this over the course of decades in order to create this energy independence, this environmentally sound energy source? And Americans wanted the price at the pump to go down right now. And the solar power was not going to do that.
Right. That's the catch-22 of trying to kind of do these more systemic things in the midst of a crisis, an acute crisis. But, and again, but just to highlight kind of how much I think he was trying to shift thinking and do more of these systemic things. The idea for solar panels on the roof of the White House, as I mentioned in the intro, was something that really had been cooked up by Nixon. And we talked about, Nixon's surprising environmental legacy. The late 70s is a really interesting moment for green development. And I think many people see it as a kind of lost moment for real innovation. But that does start in many ways from Nixon, who was the first one to sort of start these plans. And then it's not until Carter's president that it actually kind of happens. But again, it shows you that the timetable is not, let's install some solar panels to sort of deal with the price of gas at the pump right now. It's part of a bigger, bigger thinking.
So when Jimmy Carter puts these solar panels up, he talks about how, in the year 2000, these solar panels will still be heating the water in the White House. What an amazing investment. What happens instead is that Jimmy Carter loses the 1980 election, Ronald Reagan comes into office, and Reagan sees these solar panels as a symbol of American weakness. Only some weak, effeminate, tree-hugging environmentalists would put solar panels in the White House. That's not who we are. And so in 1986, under the guise of roof repairs, Reagan orders this entire system to be taken down. Now, they say that, it costs too much to reinstall them, but the Reagan administration also admitted that they didn't think that the panels befit a superpower. And the tax credits, too, for homeowners installing solar water heaters, those go out of effect in 1985. So a lot of this dries up.
Well, that's really fascinating too. It's because it's like this symbolic, I would say, spiteful act on the part of Reagan, but it also coincides perfectly with the sunsetting, so to speak, of a policy that would incentivize homeowners, and we've seen how important those kind of tax credits and all those sorts of incentives are towards nudging people to take this act. I will argue, by the way, what is more befitting of a superpower than we have harnessed the sun, we have bested the sun, we've taken, I could see Reagan being like, we are fighting a Cold War. We are fighting a Cold War against the sun, and we're defeating it by taking its rays and never giving them back. But, that's why I'm not Ronald Reagan.
It's interesting because Bush in 2003, he does use solar energy. But he doesn't make any fanfare about it. Like, he's not doing this whole PR thing. And maybe that's the key, is to just do it and then, like, don't say anything about it. But he installs these solar electric system on the grounds, and basically it has a photovoltaic system and 2 solar thermal systems that heat water on the premises. So you don't need, large amounts of energy to heat the water at the White House, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. But again, a 17-year gap between when Reagan took him out and new panels go in.
And another, 7-year gap before Barack Obama says, okay, we're putting those things back up. And it takes a really long time. You would think that you almost need a president to climb up on the roof and start hammering them in order to get them done, because it's like 2013, 2014 before those solar panels finally get installed again. And I think, Donald Trump did a lot of things, but it sounds like he never quite got around to taking down the solar panels. So
they survived Trump.
There they sit.
I don't know if there's much reporting on it. I'm going to go ahead and guess that it's just because no one told Trump that they were up there. You got to think if someone had told Trump that they were up there, he would have had something to say about it. So one last tidbit here is also just kind of, there's a whole thing in environmental circles and a lot of interesting little kind of follow-up reporting on where the actual original panels are, because they got taken down and they were sort of like mothballed and floating around for a while. And there's thought that they ended up in Maine, at a college in Maine, and then were being used as part of research there, which is great because, it's like put these to use. But then Bill McKibben, sort of at the forefront of a lot of really important climate change work, got his hands on one of them and I think took it on the road with him for a bit. And now there's maybe one of them is in the National Museum of American History. Mm-hmm. But anyway, these panels, these physical objects are still floating around.
One's at the Carter Library as well, which feels fitting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
That's great. All right. Well, if anyone has seen one of these panels, or if anyone has installed panels on their own roof, let us know how that goes. And,
tell us about your tax cuts.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when will we see? What do they call the car that the president drives in? The Beast. When will we see the first?
An electric
vehicle
Electric
Beast. Yeah, that's going to be.
That's got to be around the corner, right?
That's got to be.
It needs to be. I mean, there are tax cuts for electric cars now too.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
You don't have to buy a Tesla in order to to get the tax break.
No, exactly.
It's possible.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. Nicole Hemmer, thanks to you.
Thank you, Jody.
And Kelly Carter Jackson, thanks to you.
My pleasure.
There is no longer any question that solar energy is both feasible and also cost-effective. In those homes now using electricity, a typical solar hot water heating system, such as the one behind me, can pay for itself in 7 to 10 years. As energy costs increase, which is an almost inevitable prospect, that period for paying for this investment will be substantially reduced.
Radiotopia.